Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okelo, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much for joining me for another amazing session of the Daily African Proverbs. I'm grateful to be here. I'm here with the wonderful Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is an evolved spiritual leader and, a leader that I look up to. Gogo Rutendo and I were introduced by Elder Jay Naidu, who is the former Minister of Communication for South Africa. And he worked very closely with Nelson Mandela. And every Thursday, we have the privilege and the honor of hosting Gogo Rutendo Ngara so that we can learn more about African spirituality, so that we can also learn more about how elder and author the late Credo Mutua would look at things that are going on in the world right now, and what would he say about them? What are some of the things that he said in his works that also speak to the current events? So those are some of the things we are going to explore today. But I just want to welcome you to the Daily African Proverbs. We are live streaming on YouTube. I'm going to share the link in a moment. But we are also live streaming on Twitter Spaces. And I want to welcome you, Mala. Thank you again for joining, and thank you for your continued support. I want to just take a moment here to share with you the proverb that we are going to be discussing today. It says that if people come together, they can even mend a crack in the sky. This proverb is also my latest tweet. It's pinned on my Twitter, and feel free to share the tweet, and also feel free to share the current Twitter Spaces room where this conversation is happening. But this proverb is very profound. It speaks about unity, and when I think of Africa, when I think of especially Somalia, what comes to my mind is just the indication of disunity in Africa in general. I feel like African leaders as a whole have really let us down when it comes to coming together and solving African issues in a more authoritative way, And so that's what I think about when I think of Somalia. But also when I think of Somalia, I think of a hopeful story of resilience, because when you think about Somalia, not too long ago, I think 2 decades ago, Somalia was like a vacation destination for many people in East Africa and even the world. But now, for over 20 years, Somalia went through a very, very rough time. And currently, it's now becoming the vacation destination again, and the diaspora Somalia community are moving back to their country. There are a lot of Kenyans I know that travel to Somalia just for pleasure. You could not hear that even 2 years ago. So, I'm excited to learn more about what this proverb, meant in a deeper way from Gogo Rutendo Ngara. I want to hear your perspectives. Gogo, share with us what this proverb means to you, and also what this proverb means to you in relation to Somalia. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Simon, and it's such a pleasure to be back on your forum again. It's been a couple of weeks since we last met. About the proverb, anyone who has ever flown in an airplane or watched a movie about a rocket careering into outer space knows that the sky is not a solid object that can be cracked. And yet here we have a proverb that says, if people come together, they can even mend a crack in the sky. What we know is that the sky is made up of rather different stuff from terra firma that we know on the ground, the land on which we walk, or even the waters of the oceans and the rivers and the dams in which we can swim or sail. So this begs a question. Did our African ancestors believe the sky was a solid object that could be cracked? Did they not understand science? And maybe what is the sky from an African ontological viewpoint? So science tells us a number of things. It tells us that the sky is everything that lies above the surface of the earth, and it includes the atmosphere and includes outer space. In the field of astronomy, the sky is called the celestial sphere. And science tells us that the Earth's atmosphere has five major layers and several secondary layers. And from the lowest to the highest, we have the troposphere, we have the stratosphere, we have the mesosphere, we have the thermosphere, and we have the exosphere. And finally, when we get to the exosphere, which is located between 700 to 10,000 kilometers above the surface of the Earth, there we start merging with solar winds. There we find that molecules have extremely low density. And this layer no longer behaves like a gas because particles start to escape into space. And there's no weather in the exosphere. But if we go to the north, the far north, we may see the aurora borealis there, which is seen in the lowest parts of the exosphere. And when we see satellites orbiting the Earth, most of them are orbiting in this particular layer. And then from there, we have outer space. And yeah, there is no clear boundary between where the Earth's atmosphere ends or where outer space begins, but we know that there's something called a common line that scientists use as a delineation, which is located around 100 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Now, something that keeps us all here on the planet is gravity, the gravitational force, which is equal to some kind of constant plus the relationship between the two masses and with the inversion of the radius away from the Earth. F is equal to the gravitational force m1 m2 over r squared. And this keeps the molecules in the atmosphere from moving into space. And this is what keeps us grounded. And we know that gravity's influence is stronger near the Earth's surface and weaker further away. So by the time we get to the exosphere, the gravitational force becomes very weak. So gravity is what keeps us grounded in a multi-layered and multi-dimensional sky. Did our ancestors know this or not? How can they tell us about cracks in the sky? Our African ancestors were masters of observation. Even if there were no aeroplanes, they observed the skies. They observed the birds soaring at day or observed the stars of the Milky Way. They observed constellations such as those of Nosilimela, as it is called here in South Africa, or which is also called as Pleiades and Orion and Sirius and all the other, constellations out there. Our ancestors were well aware from their observations that the sky is not a solid mass. So why are they telling us that you can crack an ephemeral space? This is because our African ancestors understood that as much as physical reality is structured, so too is the ephemeral. Inasmuch as the tangible has a molecular structure, so too does the intangible. Inasmuch as density has a structure, so too does limited density. So this structure, whether it is physical, whether it is ephemeral, whether it is tangible, whether it is intangible, whether it is dense or whether it is non-dense, whether it is physiological, whether it is emotional, whether it is mental, whether it is spiritual, it can be disturbed. It can be shifted and it can be cracked. And the cracks happen when we move away from the blueprint, when we move away from the divine law of the universe, when we move away from truth, when we move away from love, when we move away from the interdependence, the interconnectedness, and the interrelatedness of all that is. The cracks happen when we move away from the laws that are governed by Ma'at or that are governed by Ubuntu. A crack is a separation. A crack is a wound. A crack is an opening. A crack is a loss of integrity. And when I say loss of integrity, I mean this in the medical way. When we say that something has no integrity in medicine, it means, when we see the skin has been opened and there's a wound, But I also mean integrity in terms of its more metaphorical being, or meaning. And our bodies experience physical cracks. If somebody stabs you, you experience a loss of integrity, you experience a crack. You experience an opening of your skin, the epidermis and the lower layers of the skin until you start to bleed. Now let's go back and think of more than 1 million cracks that took place with machetes during the Rwanda genocide in 1994. Imagine all those cracks, all those separations, all those woundings, all those openings, all those loss of integrities. We can also experience a physical crack if we fall from a tree or break a stone or break a bone. And when we break a bone, when we break a rib or break a femur or break whatever, we become unstable, we become weak, we become wounded. And when we're weak and unstable and wounded, it means we need mending. Now, cracks also appear on our planet. We experience cracks when the tectonic plates of the earth move, and when, as a result of this moving of the tectonic plates, the earth begins to shake and it quakes with the earthquakes. And when these cracks are deep enough to enter the greater seismic and create seismic activity, they create volcanoes. The cracks dig deep into the earth's interior towards the core to bring forth molten lava. And yet when these cracks appear on the ocean floor, then the waters rise in tsunamis with forces so great that they can only cause destruction of all that exists at the shore. So cracks bring destruction. But we can also experience cracks in our relationships with each other. We experience cracks in our educational structures, in our communities, in our economies, in our politics, in our societies, in life itself. Every time a crack appears, something shifts. And because something shifts, something new must be done. So, what if we look at cracks another way? What if cracks can also be an agent of construction? What if cracks can be agents of healing, of restoration, of growth, of regeneration, of recreation? What if cracks can also be a gateway or a portal? If we are to see cracks in this multidimensional way, just like we have multi-layers of the sky, we have all those spheres of the atmosphere before going out into outer space, then too we must look at what it is that our ancestors meant when they say that when we come together, we can even mend a crack in the sky. It means seeing things from all of these angles. It means we need to congregate and we need to synthesize. And when we speak about the principles of congregation, and when we speak about the principles of synthesizing from an African indigenous view, these are feminine qualities in the archetypal structures that make up the universe, in the archetypal structures that make up the cosmos from an African worldview. So I've gone in a very roundabout way to try and to explain what my interpretation of the proverb is. But I do this because when we come from an African worldview, everything has multiple meanings. In as much as the sky is multi-layered and multidimensional, every proverb is multi-layered and multidimensional. When our ancestors brought these proverbs through, they were trying to teach at so many different levels. They were using riddles. They were trying to rattle the mind. And so it would be unfair to the proverb to just give a single one sentence answer, because there's so many dimensions to which the proverb comes about. And in order to give a multidimensional answer about the proverb, then we require what we call circumspection. Now, circumspection from an indigenous point of view gives us a method of inquiry between conflicting parties or conflicting ideas. Circumspection encourages to put deep investigation into what might be the underlying unity or the underlying similarities between that which is superficial and hence apparent, or that which may be different or in opposition or antagonistic. So, by the same token, circumspection asks us to look carefully at what might be the underlying contradictions or divergences in that which may seem outwardly similar. So circumspection from an African indigenous point of view, and all of these are given archetypes, they're deified. So the principle of congregation is given the deity of Heteru. She's a feminine, she dances, she's creative, but she's also scientific. The principle of segregation is deified as sebek or anpu or upward. The principle of analysis is deified as Herkuti, the warrior, and the principle of synthesis is deified as Ma'at. And what we find with this circumspect view, circumspection is the ability to embody all of these archetypes within seeing any situation. So if we want to understand what's happening in Somalia, we need to segregate, we need to congregate, we need to analyze, and we need to synthesize in order to have a circumspect view of what is happening from the land from which this particular proverb, comes from. So as I said, when we speak about Ma'at, we're looking at what are the external differences, that even if something seems to have external differences, there are something inside that is inherently made of the same essence. And in what ways are the conflicting parties not looking to this? In what way are the conflicting parties only seeing the external differences, maybe the differences in ideology or the differences in, in sects or the differences in religion or the differences in region, as opposed to looking at the underlying similarities, that bring it all together? And this is what we call synthesis. And this is, bringing together the intricate web that forms the natural order or the cosmic order of Ma'at. But we can also, as I said, we can also analyze, and we can also look at what are the external similarities and what are the internal differences, in that which may seem externally similar. So, we may look like we're all the same, but we may be coming from deeply inherent ancestry, inherently different, ideological paradigms, all of these impact upon our ability to come together to resolve any conflict. But also, if we're unable to congregate, that is to see the external similarities between that which may be inwardly different, or to segregate to see the external differences between that which may be inwardly similar, we then find we don't have a circumspect view. We're unable to have a macro scopic view of the situation, and we tend to do what we mostly do as humans, which is just look into segregation. We're only looking at external differences all the time, and that is what is the root of a lot of conflict. So when we're looking at any problem, any challenge, be it internal, be it external, be it social, be it individual, be it macroeconomic, be it microeconomic, be it political, be it a combination of all of the above, we need to employ, from an African perspective, analysis, congregation, segregation, and synthesis in order to have a full and multidimensional picture through a process of circumspection. In the same way as the sky is multi-layered and has multiple dimensions, this is why we have to look with all of these ways of being. And when we look with all these ways of being, we become seers, we become diviners, we become healers. And I'd say this would be my analysis of the proverb and what the proverb is trying to tell us today.
Wow. Thank you so much, Gogo. I learn a lot when I listen to you. I feel like I'm in a sacred space, because if you go through the process of can you say that term again?
Circumspection.
Circumspection. Then you become seers, and healers, and that is what I want to be. That's what I want to be for my own family, my community, and that's what I feel that leaders should be. And when we talk about this Somali proverb and we are trying to relate it to what's going on in Somalia, I know that we're supposed to go into the next segment of our conversation, where we are going to relate what's happening in Somalia with what Vusamazulu Credo Mutua would say about it. But I want you to maybe take a moment and just speak to the conflict going on between Kenya and Somalia. I don't know if you are aware about it, but when Kenya and Somalia got independence, there was a border that was created between them. and you know the history of these borders, and you can speak to that a little bit as well. But there was a straight line that went into the ocean for hundreds of miles that also indicated where Somalia ended and where Kenya ended. But lately, in the last decade, Somalia took Kenya to the international, court of justice, where, Somalia is claiming a bigger section of the ocean, of the Indian Ocean, that has been on the Kenyan side, and Kenya is pushing back and saying, they are not going to give up even an inch of, that part of the ocean. And the primary reason for the conflict is because, an international oil company discovered deposits, massive deposits of gas in that area. So an area that was never really claimed by either Kenya or Somalia or the international community is now a center of a major conflict. Would you speak to that, and also speak to, from an African spiritual perspective, what should the leaders pay attention to? Yeah. Gogo, did you hear me? Yeah, this is Simon. I just want to welcome you all again to, the Daily African Proverbs. I'm here, with Gogo Rutendo Ngara, and, we do this every day. We've been doing this on Clubhouse since January, and we've been live streaming the Daily African Proverbs on YouTube, for the last few months. So today, this is our very, very first Twitter Spaces session, where we are live streaming on YouTube, and we also have this conversation going on here on Twitter Spaces. So feel free to share the space so that we can bring in a few more people into the conversation, and also feel free to to raise your hand. Let me know if you want to share your perspectives on today's conversation. I think we lost Gogo Rutendo Ngara. I'm not sure what's going on with her connection, so I want to open the floor here for a moment so that I can hear from Mala and David and Dr. No Days Off briefly before we continue with the conversation. But the tweet that has the proverb that we are discussing is my pinned tweet. So if you go to my Twitter, you'll be able to read the proverb that we are discussing, and feel free to retweet it as well. But Mala, just briefly, while I'm figuring out how to bring Gogo Rutendo Ngara back into the conversation, I would love to hear your perspective about this proverb. The proverb says, if people come together, they can even mend a crack in the sky. Thank you so much.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh, well, I'm in Philadelphia, so it is a good morning in Philadelphia, but great day wherever you're tuned in throughout the diaspora. When I think about this proverb, it reminds me that we are being called to be interconnected, right? We go from coming in the world completely organic, but completely dependent. And we come into structures and values, villages, communities, and we are being reared and shaped to become independent. And that's great. Some leave, some stay. There's value in all of our experiences. But the goal is to not just be independent for yourself alone, but to be sturdy so that you can be grounded, and that anyone that interfaces with you gets to meet you at that place. But we need each other. Like, I live in Philadelphia, and we have, a figure that is looming around us, tied to the violence in our city. And I struggle with it because it's not the whole story. Not that Philadelphia can be the wild, wild west. Most cities can, especially Northern American cities that were kings of industry and industrialization of the industrial age. So Philadelphia is a blue collar city, a working class city. The challenge is the price point makes it great for people to come here. So in the pandemic, many people fled into Philadelphia. That changes the culture. So yes, violence is up. But if you look at that number, though it's the highest number we've had, we have to look at it in context per capita. Now, I didn't even intend to go down that lane. That's a conversation for another day. But in terms of how I identify as being Black and woman and being shaped from the concrete of Philadelphia, but also Fairmount Park, right? Like there's all of these experiences that I've had. You would think I'm world traveled. You'd think I'd have all the stamps in my passport. I have none. My passport expired, right? But Philadelphia is the lens through which I get to see the world. And what I realize is we have nonprofit organizations, mom and pop outfits, community members that are taking on the charge of what is happening. So there are resources that are being dissipated. You're making people kind of have to, compete for the money that trickles down from like philanthropy. But we need jobs. We need all these kind of things. So there's a lot of cracks in the sky of Philadelphia. But the beauty of this proverb is that it centers me in this day as I figure out what my capacity is to be of service. Is that if people come together, they can even mend a crack in the sky. That seems impossible. It was a shooting down the street in a house with people that I know. And I can hold two things at one time. Like I can hold that I can be in my home and be in a peaceful oasis, but also danger is that close. That no matter what is happening with me, my guides, my ancestors, my actual physical village, a number of people who have called me like, are you good? And we need each other. So for me, this proverb is a reminder of what we can do when we come together. So this is Marla. I know this isn't Clubhouse, but I feel the need to say that I'm complete. How are we doing? Is our sister back?
Yes. Gogo Rutendo is back, and I just love what you shared, Mala. I'm just grateful that you're here, and it's true what you're saying. It's true what you're saying, that it's powerful what we can do when we come together, but it always seems impossible until we do it. And so, having someone like Gogo just affirms what's possible. So Gogo, you'll respond. Would you like to respond to Mala? Then we go to David, and then you just comment, and then from there, after we hear from David and Dr. Node is off, we will come back to our conversation where I wanted you to speak a bit about the current conflict between Kenya and Somalia before we go to what Credo Mutua would say about today's proverb and generally what's going on in Somalia. So feel free to maybe say a few words to Mala, then we'll go to David.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure why I dropped off at such a critical point, but that's the ways of the ancestors. Thank you. I think it was just to give Sister Marla an opportunity to bring forth her wisdom into the space. And, just gratitude for everything she has said. And Sister spoke about, independence, but also needing each other. And, from, the cosmology of Ubuntu or Ma'at, this is what we call interdependence. We are not independent, or independence, but we always strive for interdependence, where there's relationality between all of us. And know that because you are because I am, we are because all that is. which is our interdependence. And when we're interdependent, and I'll just quickly, before going into answering the question that you'd asked me before, the technical glitch, when we're interdependent, then we cannot be speaking about ownership of land and oceans and places below, because in an interdependent African paradigm, we belong to the land as opposed to owning the land. We belong to that which has birthed us and that which has created us. So what would happen if we took our understanding from that perspective, where we see that we are not involved in conserving the land, we are conserved by the land. The reason we breathe, the reason we live is because the waters are nourishing us, is because the trees are nourishing us, the earth is nourishing us, it's holding us, it's sustaining us, it's keeping us grounded, it is keeping us in life. What would happen if we changed our paradigm? And changed from going from our very kind of zero-sum game type of way of understanding the world and dichotomous way of understanding the world into that way of understanding the world, then would come in from an interdependent paradigm. And perhaps our policies would change, perhaps our economics would change, and perhaps, what we are seeing would start to dissipate. But let me hand over to other members of the audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I need to have a pen and paper and a dictionary whenever I'm listening to you. David, how are you doing? Thank you again for making the time. I would love for you to just take the floor, share your perspectives on the proverb, and if you have any comments to Gogo Rutendo or anything we've been discussing, feel free. Take about 2 minutes. Thank you so much.
Great, Simon. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you, Gogo and Maria. I think I listened to you when you guys are talking about the Ubuntu way of life, the interdependence, and I just really wanted to comment quickly on that before I give my interpretation on the proverb. I think in Africa, generally speaking, for me, my observation is that our system was, in a way, crushed. Our system of life was really based on what you guys have just pointed out, interdependence. And if you look at Ubuntu, for example, which I think you guys have explained very carefully, it is a way of life where the community knows you are part of the community, but you are also part of the community. You are part of the community, yes, but the community is also part of you. That is really inclusive completely. So it's like the concept of do not leave anybody behind. And then when we have the ownership kind of idea of the West, where you have to own something and it belongs to you, it goes completely opposite to the kind of lifestyle that we had before. And this is really part of the problems why we up to now still, we do struggle for the little that they give us, the small little aspect of aid that comes from them. And we forget that we actually rich in capital. When I say that we are rich in natural resources, we are rich in potential. I mean, we have a lot of talents, we have a lot of skills. We forget that actually we can develop that and really create more abundance than really what we get from them, which is more of scarce, and we fight for that. We see politicians fighting for the small things that we get from the West, instead of us focusing on creating the things that we own, that we have. So I just wanted to comment on that because I see that as essential part of really us coming out of this kind of mess that was created by the colonialism when they came to Africa and when they completely changed our aspect of living and, make us feel that we are less, make us feel that we are scarce, make us feel that we need to fight for that scarcity instead of developing our own abundance. And you see, continuing like that is not going to help us. We really need to go back to the basic and reset. So I when I see this proverb, Simon, I thought about the the Western proverb which says "sky is the limit." Then I noticed that here actually it's not just the sky is the limit. It is beyond the sky, because you reach the sky and then you mend a crack in the sky. So that makes me thinking that even at that time when we are, the colonial people had not come, we were already thinking beyond the sky. We are already thinking, doing things much, way, way, way beyond just what we see as the limit. So that is one thing that came out clearly to me when I looked into the proverb. And again, the whole idea of power of unified voice is really what is embedded on the African way of life. These are things that we have already witnessed. If you see the barazas, or what we call community gathering, or even before people, go to plants, they go and give blessings to God so that they can be able to have good harvest. Some of these values are the ones that kept us together, and I think we should just reset back and see how we can use them properly. So that's how I see this proverb. It just goes beyond the normal thinking that you should do things. Um, uh, you should do things just naturally and not excel. I mean, it actually goes to excel and excel and excel. Do better when you're doing stuff. Put your best effort. And when you're working together as a team, say, for example, together, you're working together, make sure that you really do your best to bring people together so that you can go and mend the crack in the sky. That is my quick interpretation of the prophet. Thank you. I yield the mic.
Thank you so much, David. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your perspectives, and I want to quickly invite Dr. M.D. Williams to share his perspectives. Then we come back to Gogo Rutendo. But as you are speaking, it also reminded me that later on we are going to be speaking about Credo Mutua's perspectives, and I was now I'm much more keen on learning more about Credo, especially since I started hearing you, Gogo Rutendo, speak about him. And he's one of the people, in the continent that embraced extraterrestrial experiences in an African way. Currently Facebook just changed its name to Meta, but African people, especially African spirituality, has been living in the meta world for the longest time. So as David was speaking, I was just taken to that place of, when we speak of Credo Mutua, we should probably connect it to this world that all these tech companies are trying to take people, while we've always been there. So Dr. M.D. Williams, please share with us your perspectives briefly.
Yes, Simon, thank you for allowing me to speak on the platform. This proverb actually reminds me of something that I was taught when I was going on my doctoral journey, and how to determine what to write my dissertation on. And what is amazing about it, and what everybody's saying, and Gogo Wakanda, of course, always wonderful of words that I absorb all the time when you speak. But when I was taught, when I wrote my dissertation, or how to get the subject and the title of my dissertation is, you got to fill the gap in the body of knowledge. And so you got to find a gap. And they taught me to look at it like a chain link fence. And then there's a hole in the fence somewhere. So how can your subject matter, and how can your dissertation fill that gap that in the body of knowledge? And that's how I was able to come up with my dissertation and my subject. Now, in saying that, I also look at this proverb in the same way as when African Americans, Black people in the United States are so divided, and they're so separated, and we don't come together as we should because of many different factors. But I've always looked at it as well. If there is suppression in a certain neighborhood, or if there is suppression in a certain community, in the Black community here in the United States, then as a community, we can mend that oppression, and we can remove that oppression by coming together and creating our own, and building up our own community. And what do I mean by that? For example, there was an incident a couple of years ago that kicked off this social injustice movement, and I'm not going to talk about the particular community, but basically, a young Black man was killed. He was shot multiple times in the back by police officers, white police officers, and so that was a big uproar. And as a doctor of executive leadership, I'm looking from the outside in. I'm looking at the entire perspective. And one of the major complaints was, well, the mayor was white. The police chief was white. Most of the people in the police force was white. The prosecutor is white. And so, and a majority of the people that was in some sort of power in that city was white. But the majority of the population was African American, Black. So how I look at that is, well, why aren't we coming together as a community and helping raise our children, and helping raise ourselves and our children to become, the next mayor of the city, or the next police chief, or the next prosecutor, or the next police officer, or the next doctor. And I believe that's where we're so disconnected, is because we're so focused on just our individual selves that we're not thinking as a community. And this proverb is teaching me, if we think as a community, then the cracks that we have within our community, the cracks that we have within our country, in our different countries, we can mend that. We can by creating a community, just like the fence, or just like closing that gap in the body of knowledge. And I hope that makes sense to people that's listening out there. And that's what this proverb means to me, is how we can come together as a community and mend the issues and the circumstances and situations that we have going on in our communities and in our world today. I'll turn that back over to you, Tommy.
Wow, thank you so much for those wonderful, perspectives and words of wisdom. I want to, just bring it back to you, Gogo Rutendo Ngara. What are your thoughts on what David shared with us and what Dr. M.D. Williams shared with us? And then I just want you to take the floor from here. If you'd like, please respond to the conflict between Kenya and Somalia that I spoke to. I don't know if I've given you a chance to speak to that. And then we can speak to how, Credo Mutua would respond to what's going on currently. And then if we have time, I would love for you to ground us before we wrap up our session today. Thank you so much. And welcome to, Nohe. And we have another listener here, TMTSI. Thank you so much for being here with us. Gogo Rutendo, carry on, please.
Thank you so much, my brother, and thank you to the brothers who have spoken earlier. I think I'll go back to where we got cut off when I fell off. When you were asking me about, the rifts around boundaries. And so I'm going to just try and apply circumspection to that question that you asked. Essentially, you're talking about issues that are in partly in the Horn of Africa, which is the continent's easternmost peninsula. And of course, the Horn of Africa includes Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia, and of course Somaliland as well. Now, let's also look more into the geography of that region. Around that region, we have one of the Congo River's key sources, which is the East African Rift System. And this is a place where the Earth's tectonic forces are presently trying to create new plates by splitting the old ones apart. The rift is fractured in the Earth's surface that widens over time. And this great East African Rift Valley runs from Yemen, from the Gulf of Aden, all the way towards Zimbabwe in the south. And it's splitting the African plate into two unequal parts, which is the Somali plate and the Nubian plate. So plate tectonics is very important. And because of all of this activity, tectonic activity, the rift segments cause a lot of volcanic activity. And so beneath the surface we have a lot of churning, and sometimes we have some of that magic lava coming up beyond the surface of the earth. And actually the East African Rift is the largest seismically active rift system on the planet, on the earth today. And a couple of years ago, suddenly there was a crack in the road in Kenya, and this is because the African continent is actually starting to split apart naturally, because of this tectonic activity. And if we look at this, then let us look at the wound of Africa. But also let's look at that Somalia is on the Somali plate and Kenya is on the African plate, or the Nubian plate, is largely on the Nubian plate. And so what does this mean if we look at the tectonic activity? Now, if we take a circumspect view, what is taking place at a land, water, or physical or earthly perspective also then starts to take place societally, amongst the society. So whatever cracks are appearing in the earth are also appearing in the minds of those who exist upon that place that is cracking. And this is when we start to understand, African, cosmology in a circumspect, perspective, and when we start to apply circumspection into understanding situations. So what we can see is that Africa, or the Great East African Rift, may be seen as a wound, but interestingly enough, this wound gives rise to volcanoes, and once the destruction of the volcano has simmered down, once all has been charred, what is really interesting is that the lava has high mineral content, which results in some of the richest agricultural lands on earth. Volcanic ash is actually medicine. It is a time release capsule, which is rich in nutrients. Also from this East African Rift is our mighty Congo River, which is the deepest and most powerful river on the planet. So if we're to look at the conflict that's occurring now, where these artificial boundaries, which are not even according to the natural boundaries of the earth in terms of the tectonic boundaries, but was when the continent was split up at the Billian conference, and each African country given a piece here and there, and all these artificial boundaries. The cognitive dissonance between artificially imposed boundaries and natural boundaries, such as the boundaries defined by rivers, or the boundaries defined by tectonic plates, will cause a dissonance and an internal conflict, which will result in the potential to start conflicting within societies. So this is a result of many factors, that we're seeing. And of course, as you have said, an international oil company has got its eye there. So everybody is thinking about economics, but they're not thinking about an economics that benefits all. They're thinking about a mutually exclusive economics, a zero-sum game economics, and not an inclusive economics, which is what Ma'at speaks of. So we are dissonant. We have a cognitive dissonance. We have, all sorts of dissonance because of what's happening, in terms of the land, but in how what's happening in the land does not match the artificiality of the boundaries that have been imposed. So we need to find then how do we turn, because in Africa we know that most bitter plants are the sweetest medicine. They're the ones that bring the greatest healing. So how do we then turn these cracks around, and turn them into healing? How do we release that which needs releasing, and how do we bring forth the medicine that will create the new? What happens if we don't only look at the political, but also look at the circumspect view? And earlier you spoke about Somalia exhibiting resilience. That is something that you noticed about Somalia, is its resilience. How are we able to use the cracks as a portal towards the resilience that area of the planet, that area of the continent is teaching us? Because everything that's happening is an education. It is a university. It is a teaching. It is a wisdom. The planet is a wisdom keeper in and of itself. It is our highest source that we can get to on this planet if we want to understand what is happening in society, and if we want to understand what is happening beyond the stars and the cosmos. And when we start to live in harmony, in an interdependent manner with what is happening, physically, physiologically, but also what is happening emotionally, mentally, spiritually, metaphorically, cosmologically, and all of that, then we can start speaking about the unity that perhaps we've been trying to say that we're looking for, but which these cracks, the crack in the earth, which is representing the cracks in the sky, is trying to bring upon us.
Wow, we should be facing these issues in a much more conclusive way, because it seems like we are only looking at things in a linear way. We are not looking at things from a mother's perspective, from various angles, and I don't know how we can train our children, and also even train our leaders, because everybody is a student. Everybody needs to learn, and I don't know how we can apply some of this wisdom in even solving the Somali conflict, so that people can understand that what we're actually seeing as a conflict amongst us is also a conflict in nature that is going on, and how can we work in alignment with nature? I think that's a big question that needs to be addressed. But you're very familiar with the works of Credo Mutua, and I wanted you to now just bring his perspectives into our conversation. This proverb, Somalia, what would he say if he was still around today?
I think I'll use some of his own words, and I'll read a bit from his iconic book, Indaba My Children, and just from the prologue, because we're still just trying to get to understand. And, when he's writing about what drove him to write the book, he says, you cannot fight an evil disease with sweet medicine. And one cannot hope to cure a putrid malady like interracial hatred and misunderstanding by mincing words. And so when he's speaking about the book, he says, I warn readers that they're in for a nasty shock. This book is not a book for people who prefer hypocrisy to fact. In this book, the love of life of many African tribes will be openly and frankly discussed, as will their religious beliefs, their crafts, and so forth. He says, in later chapters, you will read about the African peoples of the present time, their strange and varied reactions to civilization, and also what they think about events in Africa today. You will read about many things that have been deliberately withheld from the world, things that are common knowledge to all African people within the shores of the continent. In offering this information to the world, I do not claim it to be the last word, the book to end all books. I intend this book to be the forerunner of many more to come, and one to pave the way for many other African writers, some of whom may have amassed far more knowledge of our fatherlands in the course of their lives than I have done. As I also said at the outset, the second most important purpose of this book is to shatter many fallacies that have become accepted as facts through the years, for the simple reason that nobody has ever questioned their accuracy or dared give the other side of the story, as, for instance, the facts in the case of the killing of the white fugitive by the Zulu king Dingana, which I shall disclose in a subsequent chapter. So this is just him saying, in order to understand the macro, you have to understand the micro. And in order to understand the micro, you need to understand the macro. And you need to understand the cosmology. You need to understand things, from every single layer. We spoke about the different layers of the atmosphere. And within us, there are also different layers individually. Within us, as society, there are different layers. Within our world, there are different layers. And what he's speaking to is that if we really want to understand what is happening in Somalia at the moment, we need to have an integrated understanding of what's happening in Africa as a whole. And we need to bring in the principle of Sankofa. We need to look at the past, at the history, but not just the colonial past. We need to look into the pre-colonial past. We need to move through the colonial past and move into our current state where we speak about being post-colonial. I do not know whether we are in a post-colonial state at the moment, but we must also move into the future that we want to create. Because what Credo-Moto also tells us is that the future can be changed. Now, at the moment, with the current course of what's happening in Somalia and around the African continent as a whole, we are on a repetitive course of action, because if we look at what Baba Credo wrote in 1964, you'd think he was writing for today, because things have repetitively been repeating themselves even after our nations have achieved independence from colonial rule. So in order to create a future that we want that is different, we need to move into that future and have an image of what that future looks like, and then move into the present where we are and start creating the present towards that future. Then we'll break this curse that we have to the ravages of the past, because we keep repeating them over and over and over again. And once again, going back into, if we have this circumspect view, then we become healers, we become seers, we become prophets, because we understand the patterns of the universe, because everything is actually patterned. So what Baba Credo would tell us is, let us learn to understand the patterns of the universe. And let us learn to understand how these patterns of the universe are also patterned within our own behavior, because everything is interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent.
Everything is interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. We should also learn circumspection. We should learn the patterns of the universe and how internally we have similar patterns. And so many things I'm just learning, and I'm trying to grab what I can grab and speak it back, because I am just so grateful. I have to get this book, and I need to connect with you about it on the side. But if there's someone who is listening and would like to get a copy, do you have any suggestions of where they can grab a copy?
Okay. This book is called Indaba, My Children.
Okay.
Written by Credo Vusama Zulu Mutwa, who was a South African polymath, a genius, a master of many, many disciplines, who passed away last year. And I believe the book is available, like on Amazon and in bookstores. Unlike many of his other books, which are completely out of print, and where people would need to source old copies at an exorbitant price. But I believe that this one is available. If you check in your bookstores or order it. Indaba, My Children. Indaba is a story. So he's using his gift of storytelling to tell the stories of Africa. But in the stories of Africa, he's speaking to the economics, he's speaking to the politics, he's speaking to the cosmology, he's speaking to the epistemology, he's speaking to everything that we need to know, the spirituality, the culture, and all that we need to know about Africa, in legends and all other manners of using storytelling, so that we can get to know who we are, because ultimately, his purpose was that we know who we are. Who we are as Africans, and when we know who we are as Africans, we know who we are in the world as global citizens, and we know who we are in the greater cosmos.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you chose to spend some time with me today, and also with our community on Twitter Spaces, as well as on YouTube. We are live streaming the Daily African Proverbs on YouTube. We've typically done this on Clubhouse since January, and we are slowly exploring Twitter Spaces. So every Thursday, when we are hosting Gogo Rutendo Ngara, we will be bringing the conversation to Twitter Spaces. And so if you'd love to support with that, let me know. From Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, we'll still do it from Clubhouse and still live stream it on YouTube. But every Saturday, we have something really special that we do on Clubhouse around Africa Day. We've been producing Africa Day. I have produced Africa Day twice for the Gates Foundation, and David, who is in the speaker panel, is producing Africa Day with me next year for the second time. We did the first 24-hour Africa Day marathon on Clubhouse this year together. So David, I would love for you to prepare to share in a moment some of the plans that we have for this weekend. But Gogo Rutendo, I just want you to prepare also to ground us, so that we can live our conversation today just grounded and feeling nourished, and grounded in our African spirituality, and also in the words of Credo Mutua that you shared with us, but also in your words, in your power as a genius too. So in a moment, I just want to quickly welcome Hazel. Hazel, thank you so much for your presence. And also, I want to welcome Lindiwe. Thank you so much for your presence. I want to quickly give David a chance to speak about the Africa Day session on Saturday, and then we'll come back to Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is going to close us out. Really, I want to just honor Hazel and Lindiwe. I want to give you all a chance to also just say hi quickly. But the Daily African Proverbs is a staple for many people, and we've been hosting this conversation daily since January. And this is how we make our ancestors smile. This is how we make them proud, because we discuss proverbs, and these are untold stories of our ancestors that when we begin dissecting them, like we were doing with this Somalia proverb today, we nourish a certain part of us as African people that is typically neglected. So this is really one of my favorite places to be, and that's why I've been so consistent with it. So David, the floor is yours for a moment, and Lindiwe and my wonderful sister Hazel, if you have time, join us on stage. Thank you so much. David.
Thank you, Simon. I will quickly update everyone else on the stage and also the listener. All of you are welcome. So we have a program called African Day. I think all of you are aware what is Africa Day. This is the day when we created the Union of Africa, and it's been kind of evolving. And of course, we know that there are a little bit of activities that are going on now when it comes to the Africa Union. We have the different East, West, North, South, Central, and the diaspora, which is now part of Africa Union. The Africa Day is more of a day of celebration for us. Africa, it's a day we got united, and we want to keep that fire burning. So we do have a program that we do in Clubhouse, and this is Africa Day reflection. Last year we did the Africa Day, and we felt that every Saturday we need to reflect on what we did, the event we did on that day. So every Saturday on at 12 noon Eastern Time, EST, I think that is 9 a.m. PST, we do have an event in Clubhouse. We've done 2 reflections. The first one was on looking into cultural identity ownership and reshaping mindset, and that how that affects, reuniting and redefining the narrative of Africa, especially when it comes to the some of the messages that we had from our forefathers, Kwame Nkrumah, and there are several who actually warned us about the unity, about how we are going to be kind of taken advantage of, or just feeling the feeling that we should feel uh, good enough to be able to take care of our continent. The next event is going to be on global impact of African music. Again, we want to bring culture into this. We want to bring some of our musicians, some of our artists, some of our dancers, even maybe food, and just bring that richness, that originality that comes from Africa, and show the world that some of these things are already existing. So we'll do that again this Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. I think if it is PST, that is 9 o'clock PST. And we do invite you all to join us and celebrate this day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. And Naomi Achu, she's a Cameroonian artist based in the diaspora. She's one of the speakers for this Saturday, and she spoke when we did Africa Day, as well as Freddie Mooks. They are all Cameroonian. And we also had a number of artists from all over the continent that participated, from Haiti to Ghana. So join us on Saturday for that session. So just quickly, Hazel, share with us, your thoughts. Maybe just say hi briefly, because when we gather for the Daily African Proverbs, what we do is I share the proverb, and typically I have a guest that we then dive deeper into the proverb with, but then we have speakers who join us and share their interpretation of the proverb, and then we move to the next speaker. So it's a really organized session that we've been holding for months and months, but I hosted someone that you introduced me to yesterday. Why don't you speak to him as well, and then just take a moment, and then I'll grab the mic from you. Thank you so much.
Hi, Simon, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So yesterday, one of my colleagues from Zimbabwe, Tino Farah, was a guest on the Daily African Proverb on Simon's podcast. And I'd just like to say, it just reminded me of the value of Ubuntu. I am because we are, and the power of connections, and like how Africa, we are one, and like how together we're strong. And I didn't even know that Simon and Tinofa had like a lot in common. They're both really passionate about food security, and also Tinofa's mom and Simon's mom, their careers were similar at some point. So that's something that would have never known had we not like reached out and like spoken to him. And also with the Daily African Proverb, Simon is, I feel like you're cultural, like you're guiding like our culture. Because I was talking to Auntie Joy, the founder of CTT. She was saying she listened to she watched the program on YouTube, like the whole thing. She was just blown away, and your humility and everything, and how you're just like so passionate about moving Africa forward, helping people, creating connections. I look forward to like having more of these on Twitter Spaces, because I feel like social audio is like really the way to go right now. And with Twitter Spaces, it like has more reach like to more people, because a lot of people on the continent right now were using Twitter Spaces. So thank you for this space, and I'll make sure to share, and next time I'll be early.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful, and I have a lot of hope for Africa, and also for Zimbabwe, because it takes courage for a young leader like you to reach out and connect me with someone like Tino, and make sure we have a meaningful conversation. And so I'm just so proud of you. And now I want to bring back Oh, Lindiwe, thank you for joining us on stage. Before I move back to Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is going to close our session today with a grounding, an African meditation, I want to give you the floor, Lindiwe. It means a lot. I followed you. It means a lot that you're here. Thank you.
I first have to thank Marla, because I follow Marla, I heard about this space. And whenever I see anything that says African proverbs, I jump on it, because for the last 2 years, I've been working for a concept for kids. So, Simon, I have to connect with you. And Hazel, if you don't mind, would you mind please also following me? Because I see I see that you're also an advocate as well for children. I just want to say, as a writer, as a female Black writer especially, I really try to write to empower and uplift and to heal women and girls. So I come from that space, and I have been seeing so many horrible statistics in especially South Africa about the femicide that's happening, and the increase, I think it was like 130% increase of murders of children as well. We have horrible stats. And why I said anytime I'm excited when I see African proverbs is because I really believe we have to just go back to remind our kids that we come from kings and queens, we come from great values. And so, Simon, please connect with me, and anybody else that wants to follow. I am super, super excited that you've been doing this for months. And yeah, I will definitely hop on when I see one. Thank you for opening the floor. Thank you, Simon.
Oh, you're most welcome. I'm just so grateful, and you will hear from me. You'll hear from me, and I can't just wait to build with you. And Gogo Rutendo, thank you again for your patience and your humility. I want to pass you the microphone so that you can close our session today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Simon. And thank you to everybody who's doing such amazing work, both on the continent and in the diaspora. Africa is made of all these roots. And together, all these roots form a taproot that eventually forms the trunk of the tree and the branches that lead into the sky. And so I invite us to, if we're sitting on a seat, ensure that our feet are firmly on the ground, or if we're sitting on the ground, ensure that we can feel, with as much of our bodies as we can, the ground beating back up against us, or pushing back up against us as we push down upon it. If you also want to lie down, that is also all possible. And as we are experiencing this duality, or this dance between our feet or our bottoms or our back upon the ground, I invite us to imagine using the principle of imagination. And I invite us, as we imagine, to take a deep breath in and a very deep breath out. And we're breathing in through the nostrils, and you're breathing out. Then we take another deep breath, and as you're breathing in, imagine your stomach or your abdomen is blowing out as a balloon. So you're breathing in, and as you breathe out, you're deflating that balloon. And now I invite you to put your tongue on your gum line, that is on the roof of your mouth where your teeth meets your gums. And once again, you're breathing in, and slowly breathing out. And then I invite you to bring in imagination into the breath. And so with the in-breath, we're breathing in and we're taking our focus to the bottom of our feet, or whatever part of our bodies is on the ground. And there, as we breathe out, we're imagining that we're rooting. We have roots that are coming from our bodies and going through the cracks of the floor, going through the cracks of the foundation, going through the cracks, cracking through below the foundation of wherever you are into the soil, cracking through past other roots, cracking through the slugs, cracking through all the minerals, all the rocks, everything that exists beneath that which we can see. You feel these roots coming from your body, and they're cracking through all the way into they're going where there is more coolness, going deeper and deeper and deeper, cracking, cracking until the tip of this root starts to experience the coolness of water. And you imagine, with that principle of imagination, that these roots are starting to draw up that water. And this water moves through, past the cracks, through the roots, all the way past the rocks and the minerals, past the slugs, past the grains of sand and soil, deep back into the foundation of the room you're in, through the floorboards, through the carpet if you're on one, through to the soles of your feet or whatever part of your body is on the ground, and you're feeling this water moving up beneath you, and you're aware that you are now the trunk, and you're feeling this water moving up the trunk, moving up through your lower abdomen, moving up through your upper abdomen, moving through your chest, moving through your neck, moving through your chin, your nostrils, your cheeks, your eyes, moving up through your forehead and moving all the way up to the top of your head. And now you imagine this branching out as you feel branches moving upwards and outwards, all the way through each layer of the atmosphere, moving through it, becoming less and less dense, all the way up into the sky. You imagine you're a mighty oak, or you're a mighty baobab, and you're rooted deep within the ground, but you're also finding your roots rooting deep with the branches into the sky. And I imagine us all to imagine that we are all just one tree in a forest. So each and every one of us is making up the community that is the forest. And as we are in this forest, our branches start to touch within the sky. They start to integrate, to intertwine within the sky, inasmuch as our roots beneath the earth's surface are starting to intertwine with each other. And so we imagine this mighty network that we are, this mighty network where when we come together, we're able to mend even cracks that may be in the sky, but also cracks that are within the atmosphere, also cracks that are upon the earth's surface, and also cracks that are deep, deep below. We imagine ourselves as this mighty network with a mighty language. We imagine ourselves with this mighty knowledge and this mighty wisdom. We imagine ourselves with unity and oneness. We imagine ourselves as the healers, the seers. We imagine ourselves as diviners bringing forth the future we wish to create. And then we keep breathing in and breathing out. And as we're breathing in, we slowly release our intertwining with the other trees, the other branches. We slowly feel this water receding back through the branches, through the trunk, through the earth, all the way down through the roots, past the slugs, past the rocks, past the minerals, all the way back into the depths of the underground river from where we drew the source. This unity is ours, and we can always tap into it as a tap root, which is mending together the cracks in the sky. Ashe.
Ashe, Ashe. Thank you. Thank you, Gogo Rutendo Ngara, for being here with us. Please join us next Thursday here on Twitter Spaces with Gogo Rutendo Ngara. And join us tomorrow on Clubhouse, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will be interviewing Frankie Walter. He's an amazing Nigerian artist, voiceover artist, as well as singer, songwriter. Join me for that. And then from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we will be on Clubhouse, 6 a.m. PST. And during the entire time, we will also be live streaming on YouTube, 6 a.m. PST. And that's 5 p.m. East African time. We can't do this without you all. I'm so grateful. Take good care of yourselves. And Gogo Rutendo, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you, next Thursday. And if you missed any of our conversation today, you can catch it in the African Father in America podcast. This conversation is going to be available in the next hour, but it's already available on YouTube because we are live streaming it. I'm so grateful, and Gogo Rutendo, thank you again so much. Peace and love, everyone.
Thank you.
African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okelo, live from Seattle,